Planting early crops, there's a lot of crops that can go out as soon as you can work your soil in the spring. So as soon as the snow melts and your soil is dry enough to start working, we can plant peas, spinach, lettuce, radishes, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and onions. We're gonna plant onions today. And I've got a lot of different ways to plant onions. You can do onion seeds, you can do onion sets, which are the little dried bulbs. Super easy to do the bulbs. You can just like throw those on the ground, kick a little bit of dirt on top of them. They just come up. They're like as easy as it gets. But to get really big onions and to get onions that keep a long time, we want to use the onion plants. So here we've got like a bundle of candy onions. So candy is a variety that grows very well in our area. It's called an intermediate type onion. And what that means is it will grow in southern climates as well as in northern climates. So it'll work both ways. It's a really, really mild onion. Super sweet, stores about 4 months, so it's a relatively good keeper, but it's mild like a Walla Walla, mild like a Vidalia, but it's got some better storage capabilities than those onions do. So when they come in, there's about 50 to 60 in a bundle like this, and the roots kind of dry out a little bit in transit. So they dig them up out of the ground, they prep them, they put them in boxes, they ship them to us. They get to us in just a few days, but the bottoms start to really dry out. So what I do is I take them and I mix up some of my Kanga roots, which is a really amazing natural root stimulator. So I'll mix this up in water, and then I'll put about 2 inches in a container. And in that container, I'll just take the onions and I'll put them right in that container so the roots are in the Kanga roots. And what happens is over 24 to 48 hours, those roots will hydrate back up, they'll plump up, and they'll start putting out brand new root system. So these haven't been soaked in the Kanga roots for 24 hours. So these I just pulled them out of the box and brought them home. But these have been soaked in the Kanga roots, and you can see right there, there's little roots, little white roots, and it's hydrated all those roots up. So these plants are ready to transplant. So sitting in that Kanga roots for 24 to 48 hours really helps hydrate those roots up. They're not dry any longer. You can see how long those root hairs are on those onions, and so they're perfect. They're ready to transplant. So I've raked an area where we're going to plant our onion plants. What I like to do is just make a little trench with my hoe, and we're just going to make a little small trench right here. And this is where we're going to put our onions. So as I dig the trench, it's a couple inches deep, and this is where our onion plants are going to go. So I'll just get that prepped just like that. All right, a little slow release fertilizer down on the bottom. So our Happy Frog organic tomato and vegetable food, great for the onions. It's got a nice slow release fertilizer in there, a lot of phosphorus, micronutrients, microbes, microorganisms, mycorrhiza, lots of good beneficial bacteria, a lot of good biology to build your soil back up. We're going to just like sprinkle that right down in the bottom of our little row. So we're going to sprinkle that right down the bottom. That's like the last of my fertilizer. As I plant the onions, I like to kind of work that into the soil just a little bit, but that Happy Frog is a great all-purpose balanced fertilizer for all kinds of vegetables. So we're just going to work that into the soil just a little bit as we plant our plants. That way as the root system grows, it'll grow right down into that fertilizer. Now, we're going to take our onions and we're going to gently separate them so they are not damaged as we take them apart, because there's lots of really fine root hairs there now that are ready to take off and start turning into nice, big, beautiful onions. So let's break those apart, get rid of that rock. And as I separate these out, I try and do one onion about every 3 inches. So I'll put the onions down in the bottom of the row first before I start covering them up. And I do one about every 3, sometimes every 4 inches, depends. Try not to, like I said, those roots are kind of grown together. We don't want to damage the roots as we take them apart, because they're going to take off a lot faster if we don't damage those roots. So let's get a nice handful of onions in here. See, look at those roots. Those are just ready to be planted. Nice, good, healthy root systems coming on them. Get these to come apart. And I've got lots of different varieties. So not just candy, but we've got Big Daddy, we've got Dulce Grande or Sierra Grande, we have Patterson, we have Red Candy, which is a really great sweet red onion, and we also have Red Wing, which is a great keeper. So we've got a red keeper, we've got a yellow keeper, we've got a beautiful white onion, that's the Sierra Grande, and lots of different ones to choose from. So let's just do that for right now. All right, so they're about 3 to 4 inches apart. Got our little fertilizer down in the bottom, and they're ready to be planted. So I usually just kind of press the soil in around those onions and just get them to stand up just a little bit. And that's really all it takes. You can go a little bit deeper with your trench if you need to. Just kind of personal preference. What's going to happen is the onions, as they grow, they're going to push their way up to the surface. And that's okay. You can let them just grow right up on the surface. But to start off with, we want to get those roots down where they're going to be able to grow a little bit better. And we'll just pull that dirt in around them to get them to stand up. And it's super easy to do. Just takes a little bit of time to separate those onion plants out and then to bring the soil in around them. So once I get them planted, I'll usually take my hoe or my rake and I'll kind of push the soil back in around the onions so there's a little bit of a trench there on both sides. That way when I water, my water won't like wash away. So I'll grab my rake, I'll just kind of pull the soil over from one side, pull it back over from the other side, and then we have a little bit of a trench where the water's going to be. Now, once I get them planted, not only do I use the kangaroos again, but I mix a little bit of complete disease control in with the kangaroos. And this is a biofungicide, so it's a natural disease control. And what this does is that bacteria gets down in the soil. It's a good bacteria instead of a bad bacteria. It will fight off diseases that can damage the onions. And so I put that right in with the kangaroos. It feeds the plants, gets their root system going like crazy, fights off diseases that could potentially be problematic for the onions. So I mix those two together and then just saturate those plants in. And if I pull the soil over just right, I can put my combination of kangaroos and Monterey Complete Disease Control right there and saturate those plants in. One decided to tip over. How rude. Let's get him back in there. So after that initial watering with the kangaroos and with the complete disease control, then I'll put my soaker hose right down the row and let that do the rest of the work for the rest of the summer. So super easy to plant those onion plants. Lots of different plants to choose from at Anderson Seed and Garden. Make sure and hydrate your plants up before you get them planted. That is the critical key to making those plants get established and get rooted much faster. And your onion crop will noticeably be larger. They'll keep better throughout the winter time. You'll have really good success if you follow this process when you're planting your onions.